Good evening, everyone. I'm Rudy Trevino. Thank you so much for being with us. Today was the last day to register to vote in the state of Texas. And if you submitted your voter registration last minute, there's a chance you won't be registered in time for the first week of early voting this year. Our Marissa Cummings spoke with the Nueces County Voter Registrar to explain why.
If you're registered to vote by October 5th in the state of Texas, don't worry, you're eligible to vote in the 2020 election. You just might not be able to take advantage of Governor Greg Abbott's early voting extension, which added nearly another week to voting. I spoke with Kevin Kieschnick about why this is. He's the voter registrar for Nueces County.
Some of those folks who are doing it last minute may not be in the system yet that first week of early voting because it is a week earlier than it normally is.
Kieschnick says as soon as the voter registration office receives your application to register to vote, they input your information into the system and then it has to be approved by the Secretary of State Department. He says if there's an influx of applications, it'll take the state a bit longer to process. But once that's complete, you're registered. Kieschnick says the best way to monitor your application status is by going to votetexas.gov.
And keep watching for it to come through, once a day until you see your approvals up.
This is what it looks like when you search votetexas.gov. You'll be brought to this page. Then click Am I Registered? From there, you can input criteria like your name, county, date of birth, and zip code. Press Submit, and if you're registered and approved, your name should pop up with the election you're eligible to vote in. If your registration doesn't get approved during the time you plan to early vote, Kieschnick says you can ask for a provisional ballot and fill it out at your polling place.
And then those are reviewed usually within that first week after the election, and then those votes are counted as those provisional ballots are approved through the voter registration process.
Early voting begins October 13th. Marissa Cummings, 3 News.
Thanks, Marissa, for that. Meantime, the decision to extend early voting nearly a week was declared by Texas Governor Greg Abbott on July 27th. Abbott says that the decision to issue the proclamation was in response to COVID-19, saying, quote, by extending the early voting period and expanding the period in which mail-in ballots can be hand-delivered, Texans will have greater flexibility to cast their ballots while at the same time protecting themselves and others from COVID-19. Now, when the governor declared the order, Texas had just exceeded a total of 400,000 coronavirus cases statewide.